Welcome to the Champions of Active Women podcast. In this podcast, we will interview individuals who have been successful within athletics and beyond. We hope that these interviews will encourage and inspire girls and women to be active for a lifetime, to reach their goals, and to break new barriers in sport and life. This podcast is brought to you by the Active Women's Health Initiative and the Sports Medicine Research Institute at the University of Kentucky. The mission of the Active Women's Health Initiative is to optimize health and promote physical activity and wellness for girls and women across the lifespan. We hope you enjoy our conversations and join us in understanding women's health today to ensure women's health tomorrow. Pat Deacon is a Kentucky native who has been an athlete, teacher, coach, trailblazer, and an active role model across her lifetime. Pat earned her bachelor's and master's degrees in physical education from the University of Kentucky in 1957 and 1960. During college, Pat was a field hockey and basketball athlete on teams that were organized by the physical education rather than the athletic department. She went on to become a professor and coach at Transylvania University. As a testament to her influence during her 28 years at Transylvania, Pat became a member of the Pioneer Hall of Fame in 2000, and the stadium for the outdoor athletic complex bears her name. Pat's active story continues to the present day. Since 1986, Pat and her husband have averaged over 3,000 miles per year on a tandem bike, and she is currently preparing for her next Senior Games competition. It's my pleasure and privilege to share some of Pat's amazing journey as a trailblazer in women's sports and an active female role model. Welcome, Pat.
Nice to be here today.
Thank you so much for joining me. It is clear from your bio that you have had an amazing journey with sports and physical activity throughout your entire life. So I'd like to take you back to the beginning. Could you start by telling us how you got your start in sports?
I did. I was raised on a farm, a working farm in northern Kentucky, and I loved to do the outside work. As on a farm, I didn't do heavy lifting, but I was kind of a gopher for my father. I milked cows. I picked fruit. We grew tomatoes and took them to Cincinnati at the market, gathered eggs from the hen house, and I became intrigued with farm animals, especially the horses. At an early age, I rode my pony and soon was handling and riding the workhorses. A basketball hoop was hung on the barn, and I spent many of my spare hours shooting hoops. I was intrigued in my father's wire-strung tennis racket, which he introduced me to the sport of tennis. He played tennis in high school. He also played basketball in high school in this small town. That began my love of sports, equestrian, basketball, and tennis.
So your dad clearly had a big role there in your early sport experiences. Were there any other people who played an important role?
Yes. In high school, my physical education teacher was from New York. She came to Kentucky. I went to a small girls' school, Nazareth Academy in Bardstown, Kentucky, and I chose that because of the sports involved there. I looked at several other girls' schools. My parents were college graduates, and they wanted me to have a good education. And they wanted me to go somewhere where I'd be happy, and I got to choose. So I chose Nazareth Academy at Bardstown. It had sport facilities and programs just for girls because it was a girls' school.
Right.
And the instructor was the first to outwardly encourage my interests, especially in horsemanship, but also in sports like basketball, tennis, volleyball, softball. I remained in touch with her until her death about 15 years ago. In the years before I went to Nazareth, I was in the elementary school at Dry Ridge and going there from the 1st to the 8th grade. And it was small. They had no organized sports for women, for girls. Very limited. The men had basketball. But in the 6th grade, they decided to have a boys basketball team. Mm-hmm. So I joined up. I thought I was as good as some of the boys. And came to the time that we were going to schedule games. The coach came to me and said, "Pat, you can't play." And I said, "Why not?" "Well, you're a girl, and girls don't play in this league." And that made no sense to me, as I was better or played as well as some of them.
Right. talk about the ultimate act of, unfairness as a child, practicing. And so they let you join the team and practice, but then just stopped it when it came to games.
And when it came to games, can't play,
Yeah.
you're a girl.
So how do you think that moment when you were, denied the ability to play, how do you think that shaped future experiences?
Well, I decided that I had a basketball hoop on the barn. I could still shoot, and there were several neighbors, farm boys that would play. And I said, let's get us a country team up and go challenge the city boys. And that we only did that once, but that was, I was determined we were going to play, and I was going to play, and I
Right.
was going to continue sports.
What did you like so much about playing sports?
The fellowship, the competition. I'm a competitive person, as you see later on, and still in life, that I love to play, and I enjoyed the competition. Now, I was not one to get upset. I have an even temperament, and win or lose, I still love to play. And there's nothing like competition.
So over the course of your life, you have obviously, had lots of chances to be in competitions and competitive scenarios. And throughout your involvement in sport, you've also had a front row seat to many of the changes for women in sport. Could you highlight a few moments of progress for women in sport that were particularly meaningful or impactful in your life?
Well, when I started at Transylvania, that was in 1971, we had 3 women's sports, and the men had 5. Um, I thought that, I was in heaven at that point because I get to coach field hockey. In fact, one of my students said, Coach Deacon, did you invent field hockey? How in the world did we have this sport? I laughed. I said, no, I'll hold my laugh out loud and tell her that field hockey was brought to the U.S. by Constance Appleby in 1901. And then a later question would focus on the beginning of women's basketball, and I knew it was a long time ago when I observed my uncle-in-law's wife had been displayed in basketball attire in a 1920s college yearbook, and that was in Winchester, Kentucky. The first women's basketball team was organized in the 1890s. But in 1960, my husband went to graduate school in California, and there I started teaching physical education in a large high school, 3,000 students. And I learned there that sports activities were much more advanced than I had seen in Kentucky. In fact, the high school had 13 members in the physical education department. They had wonderful facilities, were huge, and were equally shared with both men and women. The student body was of mixed race and heritage. This was not so much an impactful event, but rather a realization that women's sports and activities were incrementally improving with their male counterparts. And that area was in the San Francisco area. That was a holdover from World War II, where the men were building ships and submarines, and the women were there to work in the factories. So that's how they got a mixed population there. But the 4 years that I taught in California were just amazing at how sports, and especially women, were just really much farther ahead than Kentucky.
How do you think that changed your thoughts or your actions when you came back to Kentucky?
Well, of course, now we're late 60s, starting early 70s, and this Title IX came in 72. And that's by far the most meaningful and impactful force propelling women's sports that I've experienced. Its effects have been unlimited. So that has certainly helped women, I think, in women's programs.
Absolutely. And so as you came back and you were, a female athlete and you have been a coach, could you talk about some of the biggest challenges you faced in those roles?
Well, I think the question was about the female athlete. I have to remember that I was in college in 1953-57, and we did have sports for women in intramurals, and I was on an extramural team. They didn't call it a club team. They didn't call it intercollegiate. It was an extramural team. But we had little coaching. In fact, there was no coach. Little training. Facilities were limited. Travel was limited. And we had no affiliations with any conference or group to be organized with. We did have a lot of fun, but no meaningful challenges and opportunities. And then when I began coaching in 1971 at Transylvania, as I said, we had 3 teams and men had 5. Initially, the women were absolutely less well treated than the men, but when the passage of Title IX, the disparities gradually diminished due primarily to Title IX and the regulations that were ultimately established to enforce it. My nature is such that I don't get frustrated often about almost, trying to make the most of what I have. My early basketball and field hockey teams were frustrated that they didn't have appropriate uniforms. I don't know whether you recall uniforms in the early 70s or late 60s, but they were not uniforms. They were pennies that you wore. They had numbers. You wore white shirts and then a penny. And, I said to the athletic director, I said, we've got to have uniforms. And he was ready to rectify that. The great consequence of scheduling the gym was another thing. The men got prime time, and then the women took whether before or after or early morning. So we did work that out. Frustration was evident, but, as I say, I didn't try to get upset and say, I'm demanding this.
Right.
I worked it out.
What do you think, as you're in this role and as women's sports are emerging and still having to compete for resources and just recognition, really, what do you think gave you the confidence and motivation to continue to push for opportunities for women in sport?
Well, I think the opportunity's there, and it's gotten better as years pass. I just had great admiration or opportunity to teach these athletes a new sport like field hockey. They had most of them in Kentucky had never played, and to learn the new skill of field hockey and learn new strategies, work as a team. And afterwards, I found that they said that was the best decision they ever made because they came to play basketball, but when I insisted they play field hockey or at least try it,
right,
they became close friends, and I wanted to show them my passion for field hockey. And the enthusiasm about their play was just wonderful.
What was your favorite part about coaching those young women in field hockey, but also in basketball?
Well, I didn't coach tennis too much. I did coach it at first because there were 3 sports and there was an overlap, field hockey, tennis. And the dean told me, he said, you got to choose one. So I chose field hockey. I think the opportunity to show them that there are other things besides basketball. That was, Kentucky's a basketball state. And I just wanted to show them that there is another sport out there.
Are there particular moments from your coaching experiences that stand out in your memories? I'm sure there are a lot, but any you want to highlight?
I'd like to highlight the travel. The administration did approve travel. We took a basketball team to California, and that was very unusual that we had never done that before. But just being in that San Francisco area, and we played 3 games. We won all 3 games.
All right.
In field hockey, we went to AIAW regional championship play in 3 different places, 2 in Virginia and 1 in North Carolina. But it was the first event for many of these ladies to get out of state and be together. And we did break some records. My first basketball team was the best. We ended up 7-1. Now, we didn't play many games, but we were 7-1, and I don't think that record still holds as far as percentage. and then I won 8 state championships in field hockey. And that's been a really outstanding memoir for me. And also when I was inducted to the Pioneer Hall of Fame in 2000 at Transylvania. So those are some outstanding events.
Lots of good memories, I'm sure, and good stories and connections with people through those opportunities as well. What, as you think back about all the changes you've seen in women in sports and the history of women in sports, what do you hope that young girls today know about that history?
Well, I thought about that question a lot, but I think the main thing is that they need to have fun, they need to get fit, stay healthy and well, bond with your teammates, and respect your coaches. So I kind of summed that up in that one long statement.
Yeah.
Have fun, get fit, stay healthy and well, bond with your teammates, and respect your coaches.
Those are some good lessons. So in your experiences with women's sports, you had lots of great experiences, but I want to shift directions a little bit. And I think one of my favorite parts about your story is how you've embraced being active as a way of life throughout your entire life. So even after you left structured athletics and coaching, you've continued to be active across your life. And I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about why being active is so important to you.
Well, as I said at first, I was an active person. I was a sport person. As they used to say, a gym jock, or you were a jockette or whatever.
Yeah.
But I was always active. Now, my sister was the other kind. She stayed in the house and did housework stuff. But that was not me. It was fun for me. I wanted to keep healthy. My husband and I started biking in 1986. That's 34 years. Mm-hmm. He and I played tennis, and I played tennis not competitively, but played with friends. And when we came to the retirement situation, we learned pickleball, a new sport, and then I developed table tennis in later years. We started out going to a Vermont bicycle tour in 1986. And that was a real experience to go, and it was a tandem tour. And we met many friends. In fact, we have close friends here in the villages that were on that tour. We've maintained contact all these years, since 1986. Going along that, Georgia conducts a tandem rally every year in a different town. And, that's something that's good for people to see different areas of the state. Yeah. And they've had it for 16 years. We have attended Georgia Tandem Rally. And then in Kentucky, when Jack was teaching at the university, we decided we would lead tandem rides for people, or single. They didn't have to be a tandem, in Kentucky at different areas. We'd start out maybe in Lexington, or we'd go to Bardstown and start a trip. And we led 25 different rides. And there were 4-day rides. So we'd meet in Lexington first and have a dinner, and then go over the routes and pass out the maps. And then we'd start out either from Lexington, or we'd drive to Bardstown and go from there. But we learned so many areas of Kentucky, and it's beautiful in the spring. We've ridden our tandem in 19 states, and went to Ireland, and it's all just been a really wonderful lifestyle for us. Our vacations were bike rallies or bike trips.
Yeah.
So I can't say enough about our lifestyle by riding a bike.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about, back in 1986 when you decided to jump on the tandem together? How did that happen? Was it just an idea that one of you had and the other one was like, yeah, sure? Or is it something you had been looking forward to?
Well, my husband had lived in Lexington and had ridden a bicycle all his life. I didn't have a bicycle in Dry Ridge. And our daughter married in 1984. And I think 2 years went by, and Jack says, let's do something together. How would you like to try riding a tandem? I said, that sounds great. Let's go find one.
Yeah.
So we went to Indiana, Jeffersonville, Indiana, and I knew a lady there I'd met in sports who worked at that store. And I said, Susie, show me a tandem. We want to try one. So she gave us, and we rode it out in the parking lot and really enjoyed it. Came back in, and she says, Pat, let me tell you something. You will really like this tandem one of two ways. You will love it, you will enjoy it, or you might end up a divorce. Or after the first year, you may say, forget tandeming. This is not for us.
Yeah.
And I thought, we're going to spend $2,500 for this tandem bike and might throw it away or get a divorce. So that's how it started. And we've had, I think, 5 different tandems. We've had 2 that fold down, like they're called Bike Fridays.
Okay, yeah.
And we went to Vermont and Ireland in a Bike Friday because you could fold it into the car.
Yeah, that's nice.
And then that means the other bicycles were upright. That meant we had to buy a van. So we still have the van, and we still have 1 Bike Friday and 1 upright tandem.
Yeah, I love that story. And I'm glad to hear it went down the happy biking path as well, and not the other alternatives.
Right.
So you have also been an active competitor in the senior games, and you shared with me that you're getting ready for your next competition. Could you tell us a little about that?
Well, when I moved to the Villages, I was 70 years old, and there was an ad in the paper, local paper, that were going to have senior games, and they needed women to play on the basketball team. So I said, oh, this sounds great. I'll join up. Well, there were about 8 women that joined it, and the coach was from Florida State, and she had played, but she had not coached older women. Well, we had fun. We practiced every Sunday, and they said, we're going to the national tournament, and it's in Louisville, Kentucky. And she said, we want to do as well as we can. We don't know who we're going to play. And at that point, there were no other women's teams, our age group, in the state of Florida. So we didn't go prepared because we didn't have anybody to practice against, except the younger ladies. So we get to Louisville and look at the schedule. We're scheduled for 5 games. Well, the first team that we play is New Mexico State. They're all 6 foot or higher, and our tallest lady was 5'6". And I was supposed to be the shooter. And coach said, you shoot anytime you get close to the basket, Pat. I said, okay. Well, I had a hand in my face every time we had the ball. And our rebounder, who's 5'6", she didn't get 1 rebound in 5 games. But she was not a basketball player. She was not aggressive. There was only 1 other lady that had played from Indiana, that played basketball. The rest of them were there for exercise. So we lost 5 games in a row. But we had fun. It was experience. The last game we played was against North Carolina, and the coach came to our coach and said, we have a camp every summer for ladies, your age group. We would like to invite you to come to our camp. And our coach looked at us, and we all looked at her, and we said, we've been to the national tournament. That's it. No more.
Yeah.
And then I started playing table tennis, and I got real interested in table tennis. And I've been to the national tournament in Birmingham. We came in 4th in the country in the tournament, which was pretty good because she lived in another town, not in where I live.
Okay.
And then the national tournament next year is in Fort Lauderdale. And my 2 partners now, man and woman, both are older than I am. One's 87, and the man's 86. I'm 85.
Okay.
And we're looking forward to doing well at Fort Lauderdale. I went to the state this past year, and there were no ladies 85 or over because it's divided 85, 89.
Okay.
So I had to play some 80 to 84s to qualify for a medal. But we're looking forward to, and I love, as you can tell, I love competition. And it's not so much winning or losing, it's the playing.
Yeah.
I enjoy fun and seeing friends, and that was the part about the bicycling. It was seeing old friends and friends you've had for years.
Mm-hmm. Those social connections that can be developed
That
through
special
competition.
connection.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I wish you the best of luck as you train and compete next year in table tennis.
Thank you.
And
Thank
you are certainly an amazing role model for what living an active lifestyle across your whole life looks like. And so I appreciate your role modeling of that active lifestyle.
Well, thank you for asking me to do this. I've learned a lot and brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah. So one last question for you. What advice would you give to girls and women about playing sports and being active?
Well, I thought about that, and the first thing I came up with, choose a sport that you like, or if you can't find one, try something new. Like my women at Trans, they tried field hockey and loved it.
Mm-hmm.
So try a sport or an activity, get involved with it, and make sure you're not by yourself. Get a friend to do it, male or female, doesn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
but get somebody to support you and be enthusiastic about it. And that may take a while, but you know, you want to, if it's a team thing, you want to support your team and bond with your team. And if it's a team where there's a coach, you want to respect the coach. But have fun, and don't just sit down. Find something, whether it's tennis, maybe it's lacrosse, or maybe it's horseback riding.
Mm-hmm.
But find something to keep your lifestyle and keep active.
Well, you certainly have lived those words throughout your whole life, and I think that's great advice for young girls and women. Is there anything else you'd like to share today?
Not that I can think of. I probably talked too much.
No, it was wonderful, and I loved hearing your stories. So thank you so much for your time and for joining us here today.
Thank you, Dee, for asking. And good luck with it.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Champions of Active Women podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Active Women's Health Initiative and was produced by the Faculty Media Depot at the University of Kentucky. If you enjoyed this episode, you can listen and subscribe to all of our episodes wherever you find your podcasts. For up-to-date information about the Active Women's Health Initiative, you can find us on social media at UKAWHI. Thank you for supporting us as we work to promote health and physical activity among girls and women across the lifespan.